Does he stand by his statement on who is responsible for the spending at the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment? Well, the Minister responsible for the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment is me.
The Honourable Steven Joyce.
Mr Speaker, I think that question was directed to the Minister of Economic Development, I stand by it, Mr Speaker, in the context of my full statement, which continues, I have made it absolutely clear to the Chief Executive that I do not condone the expenditure on the sign. He has accepted that and has given me a very clear assurance. Overall, the Ministry has done a good job at reducing costs, and actually through the move to a refurbished building, unlike the new buildings that the Labor government used to build all around Wellington at the time, it has actually saved $40 million to $50 million over 20 years. On top of that, Mr Speaker, the merger will raise around $9.5 million a year. Nevertheless, those particular items were over the top.
Order. Supplementary question, Dr David Clark.
In light of spending on expensive signs, information screens, sun decks and hair straighteners at Moby, and the fact that the project came in $2 million under budget, does he concede that he was extravagant when he set the budget at $18 million?
The Honourable Steven Joyce.
Mr Speaker, no, there was savings through the budget, and the budget was set by the Ministry and approved by myself and the Minister of Finance. As I pointed out to the member, overall, the savings of this project is $40 to $50 million, savings of $40 to $50 million on top of the merger savings of around $9.5 million a year. But as I've made the point previously, there were some individual items that were too expensive, and I have taken that up with the Chief Executive.
Order. I have a point of order. Order. Point of order from Dr David Clark.
Sir, my question was whether he was extravagant when he set the budget. He's talked about coming in under the budget, but he hasn't talked about the actual budget setting process.
The Minister certainly addressed that part of the question. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Supplementary question, Brett Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, how does MBIE's $16.5 million Stout Street redevelopment, $2 million under budget, compare with the cost of other government building redevelopments in central Wellington?
Honourable Steven Joyce. Order.
Mr Speaker.
Order. Just before the Minister answers, I want it to be within the responsibility of this Minister. I don't want that question to be designed to attack a previous Labor government.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Order.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Order. Again, this is a point of order, and it will be heard in silence.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. The member in his question has asked me to compare it to other government redevelopments, which I think is an important... No, Mr Speaker. It's an important question, and one that I did take into account when considering the situation regarding this redevelopment. So I think it is important for the House for me to have the opportunity to compare with other government redevelopments. And I note that in the member's question...
I'm not ruling the question out of order. I'm just saying that if the member's well aware of Speaker's ruling, then Speaker's ruling 1743 is one that would concern me potentially with the answer, but we wait to see what the answer is. It is not reasonable to use questions from the governing party or its support parties to attack other members of this House, and that applies equally to other political parties. I wait for the answer with interest.
Well, Mr Speaker, I have looked for other examples to get an understanding of how this particular project went. In fact, there was a good example just a block from the new MB head office, which is in Stout Street. That particular redevelopment, which is a government redevelopment, was costed around $11 million initially. That figure then rose to $29 million, and then it was revised again, Mr Speaker, to $45 million. Remember, it started at $11 million. It then jumped again to $53 million. Then again, Mr Speaker, to $65 million. Then once more to $77 million. And by the time it opened, Mr Speaker, in 2008, interestingly, the cost had blown out to something like $80 million, more than 7 times the cost of the original budget. Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to report we have done hugely better than that.
Supplementary question, Dr David Clark.
Back to his responsibility. What proportion of New Zealand SMEs that he visits have a $140,000 TV screen in their foyer?
Honourable Steven Joyce.
Mr Speaker, I'm not aware of that, as I said to the member at the Select Committee the other day. My point is that there were some items in this particular project which I'm not happy with. I have made that clear to the Chief Executive. He has accepted that, and he has indicated to me that they will be taking a different approach to the authority that the Chief Executive sets with particular expenditure items in the future.
Supplementary question, Dr David Clark.
What proportion of New Zealand SMEs that he visits have a $260,000 sun deck?
The Honourable Steven Joyce.
Well, Mr Speaker, again, as I said to the member the other day, I'm not aware of the answer to that question, but I would say to him that in relation to the project overall, it has saved significant money, but there are some items which were too expensive. That has been made clear to the Chief Executive of the agency, and he has in turn advised that he will be changing his processes for authorisation of expenditure as a result.
Order.
Order. Order. Order. Order. Point of order. 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 Point of order, Dr David Clark.
Thank you, sir.
Order.
I seek leave to table an Official Information Act response relating to the barbecues that Moby has placed on their sun deck.
Leave us all to table that particular OIA. Is there any objection? There is none. It can be tabled.